This is CBC Montreal News.
Good evening, I'm Debra Arbec. Thank you for joining us. The grand reopening for most retail shops in Montreal is less than a week away, but not all businesses can reopen just yet. Those still waiting to get the green light from the government include services like hair salons and barbershops. While some are ready to go, others are still waiting for more information. Valeria Corey-Minocchio has more on that.
Abisera Macold's salon looks the same as it did before she was forced to close, but she knows she has to make changes, removing the waiting area, limiting access to retail products, and spacing out workstations.
So we're going to be using the first chair. We leave this one out and won't use it at all, and then we're going to use the third chair again in order to leave enough space between clients.
She's waiting for specifics from the Legault government.
We are waiting for an official statement, practically, in order to find out, can we work at full capacity? Can we work at 50% capacity? Where to install the plexiglass?
Quebec isn't giving the go-ahead to open salons just yet, but the Allied Beauty Association of Canada is offering some guidelines about how professionals in the industry can reopen safely. They include limiting capacity to respect physical distancing, spacing out stations, and wearing protective equipment. One salon and spa in NDG is ready to go.
We had to put plexiglass at the front desk, to put plexiglass between the sink. We end up with putting some Sterilab as well on certain stations.
Bélanger says once he's allowed to reopen, everything will take longer. Time will have to be factored in to disinfect.
We're going to start earlier. We're going to finish her later.
Premier Legault is asking people to be patient. He says he expects to make an announcement about reopening hair salons and other personal care businesses this week. In the meantime, Macold says her salon will continue its online consultations and orders while she prepares for the new normal in her salon. Valeria Corey-Minocchio, CBC News, Montreal.
Starting on Sunday, businesses can return to their regular operating hours. That means they can open on Sundays again, but they won't be able to extend their hours from Monday to Saturday. The Premier says the province will do what it can to help save another big Quebec brand in jeopardy because of the crisis. Reitmans announced today it obtained protection from its creditors.
We have to find a way to help them in a bright way in order to make sure that as many as possible will reopen. We want this institution to survive for sure.
The company has 576 stores across Canada, including Pennington's, RW & Company, Additionnel, and Time maternity stores. The company had problems before the pandemic, with sales down almost 6%. It says it will restructure. It's trying to secure interim financing to make sure things run smoothly once stores reopen. The Premier isn't ruling out ordering an inquiry into the crisis in the province's long-term care hospitals. Ontario's long-term care minister announced today the province will hold an independent commission to investigate the more than 1,400 deaths in long-term care centres there. Healthcare groups and unions have called for a full public inquiry into the sector. François Legault points out the commission won't begin its work until September.
So I think it's better for me to take few additional weeks, take the right decision, and have an announcement that would put all the details on the table. But at this point, we don't exclude that. Of course, I would like to know exactly what happened and what are the solutions, the changes we need to make in order to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore.
The number of new cases of COVID-19 is down again today, the lowest since April 11th. There are 570 new cases. 51 new deaths are reported. At least 12,500 people have recovered. There are 13 more people in hospital, only one more in intensive care. Among other businesses still waiting for the green light to reopen are those inside shopping centres. As Simon Akonechny explains, they'll be looking on anxiously when their competition reopens on Monday.
Here we have our electrical department.
Steve's Hardware is an essential service, but because it's in a mall, it doesn't have its own entrance. That means it can't reopen to the public.
It is disappointing, but it also gives these other stores an edge. So the people that are paying the higher rents in shopping centres are not allowed to open. So when the stores do open that do have doors, the people are going to be flocking to those stores. And then when we are left to open, it's going to be a little bit of a different story.
Steve's is staying afloat by selling hygiene products from their delivery entrance, but most of their stock is out of customers' reach, and it will stay that way until further notice. While the province has given the green light for retail businesses to reopen in the Montreal area next week, it's still a red light for those in malls because they don't have separate entrances. Back doors don't count because they aren't normally used by customers.
We would not do anything that would place our community at risk. Limiting the number of people that have access to a door at any time would be very easy to do, something they're doing at all the big chain stores.
Some have found creative ways to stay afloat. Christine Ringuette is selling walkers and wheelchairs through her outside window.
Here, all we can do is it's almost like a drive-through window, so we're just doing our best, yeah.
Global Pet Foods is also considered essential, so it was allowed to stay open. It didn't have its own entrance, so the mall made one for them. But it's not separate enough to let customers into the store, something Tony DeLulo misses.
It's a warm feeling, and it's something we like. This is not warm, not at all.
The mall's owner says he's doing his best to be flexible with the rent, but the merchants say what's really needed is flexibility from the government, so smaller shopping centers don't wind up permanently empty. Simon Akineshny, CBC News, Point Claire.
Since the start of the pandemic, in-person protests are not something we've seen a lot of. But today, Quebec's biggest nurses union made a statement, angering the premier in the process. Now that the lockdown is gradually being lifted and surgeries are resuming, they want their voices heard. And they want a guarantee they'll be able to take their summer vacations. Ketsi Sene reports.
That's what I'm telling the union. I would like to discuss with them. I think we can find some common goal.
Okay, we seem to be having a couple of technical issues with that story. We'll get back to you, Ketsi's story, as soon as possible. Now, with school canceled in Montreal until the fall, parents are looking to summer day camps for a bit of relief. The premier says he hopes to make an announcement this week. As Jayla Bernstein reports, families and day camps are waiting in limbo for now.
Is how Marie-Ève Saucier and her family have been staying sane. Lots of time in the backyard and fun with their pet pig, Fivo. But even Saucier is at her wit's end.
I've always been a playful mom, but I've run out of ideas, and I'm kind of tired, and I'm not fun anymore,
Saucier says they just received an email that her kids' day camp could be canceled.
Every day I'm listening to François Legault, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm hoping a little bit that we're going to learn that it's going to be okay for the summer. So it's always hard to have an idea when things change so fast.
That uncertainty is also being felt by the people who run day camps, like the Youth Leadership Center in Rivière-des-Prairies. It hosts about 500 kids every summer.
I understand, why we don't have an answer yet because of what's going on in Montreal right now. So we're getting little bits and pieces that they are planning to offer something, but what that means, we don't know.
If they do open, he says they'll have to make changes and reduce the number of kids allowed.
I'm using my children as a pilot project for the other children. So they come into the center. Are they going to stay in their spot? Kids, are you able to do that? Don't forget to wash your hands. So it's all these steps, these practical steps we have to take.
Quebec's Educazoo has found a creative way of offering programming despite the pandemic. They're teaching kids about wildlife from a safe distance online. They've booked visits to a few summer camps in Quebec's regions, but Montreal is still a question mark.
We'll see, but for sure, if we can go, we will go for sure because, there's a lot of children in Montreal.
She says even the animals are looking forward to when the pandemic is over.
They can't wait to go back on the road.
Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Today, François Legault confirmed he's not ruling out a cut in the number of immigrants the province welcomes starting next year. The Premier says they need to take a look at unemployment numbers. Meanwhile, Radio-Canada is reporting the government will try again to make changes to the Quebec Experience program. The program is a fast track to permanent residency for foreign students. The government backed down last fall after new restrictions sparked protests. Now, candidates will apparently be required to have work experience in their field before applying. The Premier says he'd like to see Canada-U.S. border stay closed until July, but François Legault says he's happy with the extension announced today. The Prime Minister says it will stay closed to all but commercial traffic until June 21st.
We're adjusting constantly to what is the right measures for Canadians to get that balance right between keeping people safe and restoring a semblance of normality and the economic activity that we all rely on.
The border was supposed to reopen to tourists, day trippers, and other recreational travelers on May 21st. It's the second time the date's been pushed back. Trudeau says extending the closure by 30 days once again is the right thing to do. Those who try to enter the country at irregular entry points will be returned to the United States. There are more tensions between Oka and the Mohawk community of Ganasatake. Oka Provincial Park is set to reopen tomorrow, but the Grand Chief is worried it could attract droves of tourists. Serge Simon wants the province to delay the reopening 2 more weeks, but the mayor of Oka isn't on board. Pascal Couvillon says it will be good for local business. Ganasatake has set up checkpoints on Route 344 to try to stop the number of people passing through. Well, another beautiful day, Catherine. A little on the breezy side, though.
Absolutely, and right now we have winds at about 20 kilometers per hour, but this evening the winds will gust up to 40, cooling things down a little bit. We'll see those temperatures drop down to about 8 degrees, but we did have a beautiful day, about 19 degrees for today. Those temperatures will continue to go on up, but through the overnight hours, we're looking at mostly clear skies. At 6 a.m., 10 degrees, sunny conditions. By 8 a.m., already 15 degrees. Should be another beautiful day, and tomorrow's high about 23 degrees.
Thanks, Catherine. We'll talk to you again soon.
You're welcome.
Still ahead, the global race to find a COVID-19 vaccine. I'll talk to a Quebec company getting closer to the clinical trial stage. That's coming up next. When I come back to that earlier story from the show a little while back about the message the province's nurses want to send the Legault government. Here once again is Cathy Sine.
In front of the Premier's office, less than an hour before his daily briefing, nurses wanted to make some noise. The Premier says he was disappointed and would prefer conversations happen at the negotiating table.
That's what I'm telling the union. I would like to discuss with them. I think we can find some common goals, common solutions. I don't think it's the time to be on the street in front of my office.
As Quebec gradually lifts its lockdown and hospitals resume operations, several thousands of Quebecers are waiting for surgery. Nancy Bédard, the president of the Federation representing nurses, is demanding their rights be respected. They need time to rest. They are exhausted, she says. During the health emergency, nurses' schedules can be changed. They can be transferred temporarily to other healthcare facilities. Their holidays have been put on ice.
On comprend que c'est bien qu'il y ait quand même une certaine reprise des chirurgies, mais la première chose qu'on aurait dû faire, c'est de s'assurer de redonner les droits aux professionnels en soins, s'assurer que la vie reprenne normalement pour elles.
The health minister says not all vacation requests will be approved. Danielle McCann says many workers are still off work.
We're examining every region, and we will give a maximum of holidays if we have enough staff to replace them.
The Premier also addressed nurses' demands for better ratios. He says it's hard to address when existing positions are not being filled. Low salaries are not the only problem.
Unfortunately, some workers, they prefer to work part-time than to work full-time. And we have to find solutions for that because we cannot have 50% of the workers being part-time.
Legault says one of the best ways to improve working conditions for nurses is to have more orderlies supporting them, since he says it would reduce the workload. Cathy Sine, CBC News, Quebec City.
A Quebec company says it's getting encouraging early results in the race to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. Medicago says its product has generated a positive antibody response in mice. Dr. Bruce Clark is the president and CEO of Medicago. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here.
How significant is this early result?
Well, it is early, but it is significant because the ability of the vaccine to generate an antibody response is critical to its effectiveness. So early indication of that being the case is very encouraging to us.
So where does it go from here then?
Well, there's some additional animal studies that are to be completed, but really this is the planning stage now for the clinical trials where we will have human subjects, which should be happening in a month or 6 weeks from now.
That is not a lot of time. What is your biggest hurdle getting to that point?
Just getting all the pieces in order, if you will. These studies are being done for the purposes of registration. They're regulatory-driven studies, so the health regulators will have input into the design as well as to interpret the results. So we have to do these according to the standards that are expected by the regulatory authorities. And there's just a lot of preparation in the background. And add on to that, the preparation of the product itself, it's a lot to get done in a very short period of time.
Now, if the clinical trial is fruitful, how long before an actual vaccine would be available?
Well, if the trial is successful, it will define that we actually have a vaccine. The release to the general public, or so we say first responders or frontline workers, will probably be a decision the regulators will take. As you know, this entire process is being compressed immensely from the normally 7 to 10 years that you would see to develop a product like this. So the regulators will be taking decisions on data that is probably less voluminous than they would typically have, but still needs to demonstrate safety and efficacy before we can release it to the public.
And I mean, so many of us are, really hoping for this vaccine to come and come quickly. And when you talk about those guidelines and safety, in trying to compress this, as you say, are there shortcuts that are taken? Should there be any concern for safety and security?
I think if we've learned anything in drug development is that you really can't take shortcuts, but it doesn't mean you can't expedite the process, which is what we're seeing on a worldwide basis right now for COVID treatments and for vaccines. So the number one issue we have to demonstrate is that we do no harm, that the product is safe. And early studies are really designed to do exactly that and to give us a sense of assurance that we're not going to cause any additional harm when we administer the product to subjects or to patients. So those are really the critical factors. And then there are clear criteria to demonstrate efficacy or effectiveness of the product. So those are well known. It's just the speed at which we need to progress through those stages, which is really unique to the current situation.
Now, if you are successful, how much vaccine could you produce, and would it be used first here in Canada?
Well, our initial commercial production will be here in Canada. We have a limited number of doses at the present time, but we would be able to make millions of doses at least that would be able to cover certainly first responders, frontline workers, and so on as we get further manufacturing capability in place.
Now, Health Canada has approved the first Canadian clinical trials for a vaccine, which will be run by a Halifax research team along with the Chinese manufacturer. If, say, they were to be successful, what would it mean for your product? Do you keep on developing?
Absolutely. It's very different technology, and I think we need as many options as we can get. I think the ability for any one company at the current time to be able to provide enough product for all markets, for all regions, even for all of a country, is going to be difficult. So we need multiple options. Our technology is remarkably different than theirs. So we don't know what's going to work. We don't know a lot about this disease yet. It's really in the early stages. So we need as many options as we can possibly get.
Just in a few seconds, is there a possibility no vaccine will be found for COVID-19?
I would like to think that's not the case, but this is a unique disease that we're only learning about now. So we need to look at both treatments and we need to look at preventive measures such as vaccines. But with the technology that's being focused on this issue right now, I'm very optimistic we will find a solution.
Dr. Clark, thank you so much for the work you're doing as well as for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, in just a few minutes, we're going to go back out to Catherine. What a week we have ahead of us. It's going to be pretty fine. That's coming up next.
This weather update is brought to you by autousager.ca, because selling used cars is our profession.
Boy, Catherine, last week we were freezing with below seasonal temperatures. This week it's above seasonal temperatures.
Absolutely. We went as low as 6 degrees last week, and this week it's a little bit of a treat. We will be above seasonal temperatures. Now for today, we hovered around 19, 20 degrees, but it's going to go on up from there, but not just up, way up. Right now in the downtown area, temperatures are holding steady at about 19 degrees, so still on the warm side for Montreal. We have 18 degrees in Saguenay. You can see there in Quebec City, 15 degrees, 14 over in Gaspé. And radar satellites showing us that there's really not a lot of cloud coverage coming our way from Montreal. Now, our neighbors to the south of us, it is near the Great Lakes, I should say, we have a low pressure system there, but even the cold air and the moisture not making its way towards Montreal. This is what we're looking at for our wake up at around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Sunny and breezy conditions, 15 degrees. By noon, we're looking at a sunny afternoon. Should be around 19 degrees right at around 12 p.m. And then between noon and 5 p.m., we hit our high of about 23 degrees. Now, normal temperatures for this time of year should be at around 19 to 20. And for the rest of the week into the weekend, you can see that those temperatures are well above seasonal. Look at this 7-day forecast showing us beautiful weather all the way through to next week. On Thursday, we're looking at a bit of clouds, 24 degrees, 12 through the overnight hours. Then on Friday, 27. That's going to feel more like 30. We're looking at 13 through the overnight hours. And look at your weekend, 23 on Saturday, which is a little bit on the cooler side, but it's still above seasonal temperatures for this time of year. On Sunday, 26, also going to be a hot day. From about Sunday all the way through to Monday, we're looking at temperatures feeling more like 30. And then on Tuesday, partly cloudy skies and 27 degrees. Deborah, it's more like summer weather up until next week.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should take the show on the road and join you in your backyard and enjoy that swimming pool on Friday.
Everybody in my pool.
There you go. Thanks, Catherine. Well, imagine being among those at most risk of complications from COVID-19 and surviving without even having set foot inside a hospital. Meet Clément Maltais. The 101-year-old from Sept-Îles beat the odds. He was cared for by his family, who respected his wishes to stay home. They even organized a socially distant parade to keep his spirits up. Clément Maltais is our bright spot of the day. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again tomorrow at 6. Nancy is here at 11 with your late show news. Thanks for watching. Good night.